Please stand. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city to make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please remain standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Counsel Mercia.
Here.
Counsel Milanazzo.
Here.
Counsel Rourke.
Here.
Counsel Samaras.
Here.
Counsel Belanger.
Here.
Counsel Elliott.
Here.
Mayor Kennedy.
Here.
Counsel Leahy.
Here.
Counsel Leary.
Here.
9 present.
Council Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chamber for Fred Simon, a dedicated husband, father, grandfather, uncle, brother, and friend, beloved husband of Elaine Simon, who survives him and with whom he recently celebrated their 58th wedding anniversary. Fred was proud of his Syrian heritage and was an active parishioner of St. George Antiochian Orthodox Church. A man of great faith, he was also a founding member of the Council of Eastern Orthodox Parishes of Greater Lowell. After attending grammar school in Lowell, he went on to graduate from Lowell High School in the class of 1954. Fred honorably served his country as a member of the United States Army. Prior to his retirement, Fred had a long and distinguished career in both the public and private sectors. He began as a salesperson and assistant manager with the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, where he worked for over 24 years, and at Raytheon's Corporation in Andover facility for 11 years. Fred then transitioned into public service as a constituent service representative for State Senator John O'Brien and Steve Panagiotakis. He finished his career as the Community Work Program Coordinator at the Middlesex County Sheriff's Department. Fred was a passionate leader in civic, charitable, and religious causes throughout his life. In fact, in his last public appearance a month ago, he and his friends and family hosted a fundraiser for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, helping those who could not afford all the ancillary costs associated with cancer treatment. It was a significant financial success, garnering $40,000 for the Adult Patient Assistance Fund. Fred was well-known champion for those in need and affiliated with many organizations. He will be forever associated with the Salvation Army. Through his many years as the honorary chairman of the annual Radiothon, where he, along with the rest of the hard-working committee members and donors, eased the burden of countless individuals and families. A founding co-chair of the Tewksbury 911 Memorial, he was also a member of the Owl Diner Charities and the Highland Players. For all his accomplishments, what endeared Fred to so many was his kindness, compassion, dedication, and loyalty to others. He has left an indelible mark on the Greater Lowell community that will live on for years to come. Besides his wife, Elaine, Fred is survived by his 3 daughters, Millie, Julie, and Maria, and his 4 grandchildren. We offer our sympathy to his family, relatives, and his many, many friends. He was a remarkable human being. He was my friend. May his legacy, his memory, and his kind deeds live eternal. He will be truly missed. Thank you.
There's no objection. The chair would ask for suspension of the rules in order to take up item 5.1C out of order. Hearing no objection, then we'll take up that by general consent. Mr. Manager, 5.1C for everybody is the FY 2018 budget. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to the City Council. It's our honor and pride tonight to present to the City Council our proposed fiscal year 18 operating budget. Last week, we presented the proposed capital budget, and tonight we're proposing the fiscal year 18 operational budget. You have with you the budget, and we're asking that both of the budgets be scheduled for a public hearing on May 30th. I'd like to just give a brief overview of this operating budget. First of all, our major challenges was, first of all, a $1.3 million increase in our pension assessment over fiscal year 17. We still have a $1 to $2 million fiscal year 17 snow and ice deficit, as well as the pay down for the fiscal year 15 snow and ice deficit. $2 million increase in collective bargaining raises, a $1.85 million increase in our charter school assessment, and a $900,000 increase in our health insurance-related costs. But we do have highlights in this budget. First of all, in fiscal year 18, we, at this present time, plan to increase our contribution to the school department by right now, $3.6 million over last year's figure. But we did get good news from the Massachusetts Senate today, because they released their budget, and according to their budget, the charter, strike that, Chapter 70 is slated to increase by $600,000. So if that version of the budget stands, then they will be receiving $4.2 million more in fiscal year 18 than they received in fiscal year 17. We continued our funding for 250 police officers and 213 firefighters. We're targeting problem landlords through our Division of Inspectional Services, and our capital investments of over $11 million in public service, education, and quality of life. The revenues are very interesting. Intergovernmental revenue, that's what we get from Chapter 70 and unrestricted local aid. Real estate taxes are only 37% of the budget in the city of Lowell. That's far below the statewide average for what contributes to a operating budget. And then the other revenue sources. And then finally, you see that 53.7% of our budget is dedicated to the public schools. Police is 8.7%, and then the other departments make up the rest. So this is a very lean budget. It relies on a modest increase in our tax levy of 1.5%. But in order to have a balanced budget for fiscal year 18, right now we had to dip into reserves of $2 million to balance this budget. Now, we fully expect to replenish those reserves. That's important. We did dip into the reserves for fiscal year 17, but we replenished those monies in our reserves. And we have a plan to replenish the reserves by our tax auctions and what else would we, and refunding opportunities. So we're confident we can replenish those reserves. But I have to tell the City Council, this is a very, very tight budget. And we can only raise taxes. The residents can only afford that modest 1.5 increase in the tax levy. So I think it's a good budget. I think Connor Baldwin, Bob Healy, and Rodney Conley have done a terrific job saying no to a lot of people, but it had to be done. We did cutting of personnel. We cut a position in my office. So it is a lean budget. I recommend it strongly for passage, and we look forward to presenting it and answering any further questions on May 30th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. We have several speakers registered. Mr. Clerk.
Salak Kafoyi.
City Manager, thank you for your presentation. That's the other one. That's for the next one. I wanted to offer a couple clarifications. I know the City Manager just mentioned from his presentation that we have 4.6 million or so. It's actually, in average accounting, it's a little bit more than that in our budget. I asked to speak and to offer some clarifications on that. The FY18 school budget includes, usually for the people who don't know, two sources of funding. One is from the state portion, and the other one is from the city. The state portion is, by our accounting, with the good news today, is nearly $5 million as compared to the current year. The city's portion, while in total remains level, and we appreciate the commitment of keeping it at least level for this year. In real terms, the way we do, the contribution to our budget really has gone down. And let me just try to explain a little bit. Out of the city's portion, if you recall in the presentation that was done now, there's a $1.85 million extra to the charter schools. Those are taken out of our contribution. So that represents a 1.85 going down. Further from that, we have transportation costs that have estimated to go up by an additional close to 1.2 million. Adding the two, you're looking at a $3 million decrease in net contribution costs. Now, we do recognize the level funding, but that level funding is translated to us once we absorb these additions, these increases, it translates to $3 million less in cash. This year, we have been hit by a total of nearly $7 million of increases in sped. $5 million about in sped and a couple million, $800,000 in contractual step increases and another $1.2 million in insurance. So we're looking at about $7 million. And thanks to the creativity of our sped department, we've been able to lower as much as possible that $7 million and cut down on that deficits. It is not easy. The last 2 years we've been working with this. We have reduced already several $1 million of cuts in our budget. And at this point, even with the $700,000 that we just got good news a few hours ago, nearly to be exact, $611,000, we're still far. We do not have anything to give to our teachers in terms of raises. We have already agreed with the union that they will be taking a zero this year. I think it's very hard to try to sell them 2 years in a row of zero increases, and you'd agree to that. It is extremely difficult to do that. And we're hoping that the city find its way to help us with the rest of it. We're not looking for large contributions. We think that this year, going after a decrease in net contribution of $3 million in a year that we had over $7 million increases that we're trying to put up with, that's a really tough decision to take. And how do we go about it? And it's really difficult. We just can't find any other way to cut. The next cut we're going to have to do, it's going to affect the schools. There's no doubt in my mind. Because we've already done all the cuts that will not affect our schools. And these past 2 years, we've delivered an incredible performance in the schools. Our teachers and everybody else has worked really hard. We have the lowest dropout rate on record 2 years in a row. We have an excellent progress is going on. There's still a lot of great ways to go. However, they're working on it. It's really hard to maintain that progress and constantly looking at cuts. We want to turn this around and negotiate the contract with our unions, which is a really modest way we're looking at working with them, and focus on our schools. We can't be focusing constantly on cutting jobs that will definitely affect the quality of our schools. You have given us a mission to try to do better with our school. We promised we're going to do that. We lived up to our promise, and we will continue to live up to our promise. However, we do need help. We cannot sustain a $3 million net cash contribution in a year where we're having over $7 million increases. So I hope you can try to do something. I know it's a very tough times we're all facing. I sympathize with our colleagues at the city. I'm sure it's something very difficult to tackle, but I hope you can find ways that we can tackle that. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Jackie Doherty.
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the City Council and the City Management Team. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Jackie Doherty. I live at 77 Tyler Park in Lowell, and I'm a member of the Lowell School Committee. First off, I want to thank you for your support of our schools. Many of you may remember those dark years when the city did not meet its minimum spending requirement. I believe it was about 17 years of not meeting the state-mandated contribution. Those days are behind us, and we have this council and this city manager to thank for that, so thank you. What you may not realize is that we were never able to bring back many of those positions we eliminated due to past funding shortages, such as elementary science teachers, library media specialists, full-time paras in our elementary classrooms. The list goes on. And although the city has met and now exceeded its minimum contribution, those numbers are based on a foundation budget established nearly 25 years ago. In a recent study, the foundation budget was determined to be inadequate to meet the educational costs of a 21st century education. And yet, we continue to make progress in our schools. We continue to meet the needs of our children, and we continue to provide one of the best public urban educations in the nation and in the state of Massachusetts, which is saying a lot given the Commonwealth scores on national assessments. In Lowell, two-thirds of our schools are ranked as level 1 or 2. We have brought our attendance rates up and our dropout rates down for 2 years in a row, meeting the state average and outperforming sister cities throughout the state. Going forward, we have a plan to expand our special education services to bring many of our out-of-district students home to Lowell, where they will receive a better education and save millions of dollars. But like the city, school costs have gone up, generally about $7 million between increases in health care, transportation, special education, and staff obligations. Despite the state increase, the city cash contribution is proposed to go down by $3 million. I'm here tonight to ask this council not to cut its cash contribution to the schools by $3 million as is currently proposed. Instead, at least cover the $1.2 million increase in transportation costs. The city is required by state law to provide for transportation of our students, and more than half of that $1.2 million is special education transportation, which I believe is refunded through the Circuit Breaker Fund. I stand here tonight representing thousands of children who are counting on us to provide them with a high-quality education so they can learn and grow to become our future leaders, citizens, and contributing members of our great and historic city. But not just for those children. It is in our collective best interest to do so. We rise and fall as a community based on the education we provide our children. And on that note, I would like to make one last comment regarding a motion on tonight's agenda. I personally favor a downtown location for the high school because the majority of our children and families live near that location, and it is the heart of our city. But I am reserving final judgment until all the facts are in. Regardless of where it ends up, we absolutely must have a new high school, and we must do the best job possible in all its aspects, because it will impact not 5 years, 10 years, it will impact generations of Lowellians for decades to come. I implore this council, please do not eliminate one of our options before we have all the facts, and please consider finding more cash for the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doherty.
Connie Martin.
Good evening. My name is Connie Martin at 17 Summit Street, also a member of the Lowell School Committee. I wanted to thank you all for giving us this opportunity to speak to you tonight. For so many of you who have also lived and died on the school side, you know what this is all about. I absolutely echo the sentiments of my colleague, Ms. Doherty. We recognize the choices that are before you. We recognize how difficult they are. We come to you tonight recognizing also that our schools and the quality of our schools and our ability to educate our children is something that you all care about as much as we do. There's no split in that, kind of aspirational goal that we all have for our schools. And we all know that there's no city side, school side when it comes to these questions, that we're all committed to making these investments in our future and in our educational infrastructure and operational abilities. I would just add, we're looking at, obviously, the foundation budget. That's going to be something that certainly as a school committee, we're going to be part of that advocacy. So we make that kind of commitment here tonight that we'll be part of that statewide advocacy, trying to address what we recognize in the foundation budget, that it's not substantial. It's not, I shouldn't say substantial, but it's not at a level that is really giving urban districts the resources to be successful. So that's something on our side that we take responsibility for. But in this current year, with the increased costs that we have, we really do ask if you could please consider looking at those numbers, seeing if there would be an opportunity to keep the $3 million. We'll be absorbing significant cuts, and that's okay. But with that $3 million, it would allow us to maintain the level that we're at, both staffing-wise and resources-wise, so that we don't stunt the growth, we don't stop the forward momentum of the Lowell Public Schools. Only because Ms. Doherty brought this up, I'm going to add into. I will say, I am also in favor of the downtown location. I say this as a citizen, as a citizen of Lowell. We all have the same weight in this. And my biggest concern would be ensuring that all the options remain on the table at this point. So as you have your deliberations, we ask that you please, I would ask that you please keep that in the mix so that we have the broadest number of choices to choose from. I thank you all for all your hard work in doing this. We have watched this show many, many times. So thank you all very much for all that you do for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin.
Paul Georges. Amy Bison.
Good evening. My name is Amy Bisson, and I'm a resident at 130 John Street here in Lowell. Mayor Kennedy and members of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight. Former presidential advisor Paul Begala once stated, "A budget is a profoundly moral document in that it enumerates those things that we view as priorities. We fund those things and ideas that we value." As a retired elementary teacher with 30 years' experience, it was my privilege to teach in the Lowell Public Schools for 20 years. And while I appreciate the city's efforts to meet minimum school spending, net school spending requirements during the last several years, that effort should not stop at the minimum. We should not expect to just get by. The educational challenges to communities such as Lowell's are deep and sometimes complicated. Children attending our city's public schools often have needs complicated by language, by poverty, and by culture. Stagnant computations of Chapter 70 aid based on a 20-year-old formula mean our schools operate with fewer resources to support these students. Increasingly, funding is redirected to charter schools in the city, and this complicates that fiscal picture even further. Tonight, the City Council considers a home rule petition, and I applaud you for insisting that the Commonwealth meet its obligations for fully funding charter school tuition reimbursements. It's unacceptable for the Commonwealth to shrug off that reimbursement promise and leave urban communities like Lowell with fewer and fewer resources. Yet, however complex the issues may be, it is still the responsibility of our community to ensure that funding for schools is adequate. Those funds must guarantee that students in public schools in Lowell continue to be a reflection of what our community values. Over the span of my teaching career, there were often years when the minimum contribution was not met. And it was during those times our students lost out on opportunities, such as positions for science specialists and librarians, and they were eliminated about 5 years ago. Our school buildings delayed repairs or improvements that now loom ahead as major undertakings. Is education important? Is it something that Lowell values? Or is it sufficient to minimally fund the schools and just get by? Doing the minimum does not suffice for our children, and it should not be okay for our school budget either. A reduction in personnel is felt when positions are eliminated and other staff pick up that slack. We get by. More often than you realize, supplies and resources needed for classrooms are funded out of teachers' pockets, sometimes amounting to thousands of dollars a year. And once again, we get by. The Lowell Public Schools is an asset to our community for which we can all be proud, and it is not sufficient that we just get by. Our city leaders need to envision the schools that will fully serve our children and fund that. Instead of beginning with a minimum budget number in mind and fitting school expenditures to that amount, what if we looked at what is needed first and then worked together to fund that? We need to move beyond just getting by. We need to strive for more than a minimum. And so I urge you tonight to increase the funding for the 2018 proposed school budget. I urge you not to vote to approve the budget before you and the school department and city administrators have met to discuss the solutions to this fiscal crunch. Let's demonstrate that here in Lowell, we value our public schools and our children are a priority. Thank you.
Mary Ann Dermott. Mary Ann Dermott? Okay.
Mayor Kennedy, City Manager Murphy, and City Councilors, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the FY18 City Budget tonight. My name is Mary Ann Dumont, although most of you chuckled as you heard that because you know me as Mickey. I live at 62 Wynwood Road in Lowell, and I taught for 35 years in the Lowell Public School System. And I have continued to advocate for public education in the 11 years I have been retired for many reasons, not the least of which are my 4 grandchildren who attend 3 of our Lowell Public Schools. Our school communities are held to the highest standards, as they should be. The fact that some of these standards are pretty unreasonable for some of our students is a topic that we continue to address with our school committee and our school administrators. In the meantime, we are proud that our gateway city is among the state's higher performing urban settings. I think everyone knows that urban districts have the most diverse student populations, which are also the most challenging to serve. Because the state fails to fully fund charter school reimbursements, we regularly face inadequate funding for our schools. I strongly urge all counselors to vote in favor of the much-needed home rule petition that will request the state to provide 100% reimbursement moving forward. I am also here tonight to ask all of you to please delay the approval of the FY18 budget before you are able to meet with representatives from the city and the school side to discuss how our school budget can be better funded to provide both quality service to our students and also prioritize the hard work that our school employees perform on a daily basis. The city manager notes in his communication to the council that despite the fact that many line items in the city side budget were reduced, all city-side unions agreed to a salary adjustment of 0.33 for fiscal years 16, 17, and 18. It is appropriate that the city manager and the council recognize the great work that our city-side employees do each year with less. Our school departments, too, are as lean or perhaps the leanest that they have ever been, and every year we work with less as well. Our staff is just completing 1 year of an expired contract with a 0% increase. Please do not approve this budget tonight that not only does not adequately fund the needs of our schools and our students without it being necessary to eliminate positions or programs, but simultaneously continues to neglect to recognize the incredible efforts of our school employees. I'll conclude by urging each of you to join all of us in supporting Senate Bill S-308, which will, among other things, make critical updates to the current shamefully inadequate and severely outdated state education funding formula. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul Georges.
Mr. Manager, City Councilors, Mr. Samaras, my old boss. You know, there's something, first of all, what I want to say is I am so proud of the accomplishments in our schools over the last few years. It was probably 7 or 8 years ago. I felt very, very confident because half of our schools were level 1 or 2. At this point, 2/3 of our schools are level 1 or 2, which is a remarkable accomplishment for a city, a gateway city in particular, with the complexity of the students that we have and we serve every day. The budget process, in some ways, I think is faulty, and maybe there could be consideration that the superintendent and the school committee present a budget request to the city manager and the city council for consideration, outlining their needs. There's been a lot of discussion about maintenance of effort, and I think that needs to be explored. My understanding is it will be explored and redefined. But beyond it, the larger question is, maintenance of effort is really a low standard by which to fund your district. It says you can't go below a certain amount. Getting above that certain amount is fine, but most districts in the state substantially fund their schools at a much larger number. I don't need to get into that debate. I'm not asking you to do it now. But what I am asking you to do is intervene and make sure we have the resources to be able to continue the great work that's being done. Fairness to the employees. You know, we've been at the bargaining table at this particular point. We pretty much concede there'll be 0 raises this year. But it's unreasonable to expect that to continue into the future. The question is, how much money does it take to continue the progress? That should be the question. What kind of resources do we need to move forward? We know we have buildings that need extensive work. We also know for a couple of decades, we were well below the maintenance of effort numbers, the minimum amount. You have to make it up sometime. Public education in the city is too important. It's so important to the kids. It's so important to their future. It's the opportunity they have. I grew up in the Acre, in a tough neighborhood. A tough neighborhood with, it was difficult, but it was what we knew. But education was the thing that opened the door for me and so many of you who have come to a position now of leadership within the city. I'm asking you to intervene on behalf of the educators, of the children, of the futures of those children, in assuring adequate resources so that they continue to, our teachers and our staff, professional staff, can continue the progress that we're making. We can't afford to miss a beat on this one. I know you have other things to consider. There are people here concerned where the next high school will be, and I support the next high school wherever it is. We have to. That's an investment in the future. And it's something that a community can be proud of. But don't forget the people that turn the wheel every day. Don't forget the people that make this a great school system. Despite problems, And they always keep their eyes on the prize, even at times when we've gone into protracted contract negotiations. Teachers have continued to do their job every day. We need substantial additional resources. I'm asking you to consider that. You have a recommended budget. The recommended budget, I've seen it, has to be presented by the city manager. But don't forget the people that turn the wheel, that do the great work, that make this a great city moving forward. So with that, thank you very much.
Noel Krieger.
Good evening, Mayor Kennedy and city councilors. Thanks for having me here tonight just to share with you a couple of comments. A lot's been shared already, so I'll try not to be redundant, only to support what some other folks have said. I think probably the most important message right now is really related to the performance of the schools that we have right now. There's great momentum. That didn't happen by accident, we know that. We know that we've had a couple of years where the school budget has been supported appropriately and have allowed for that, really for teachers and administrators to do the job and bring the schools to the level that they are right now. And having 2/3 of the schools at a level 1 or 2 it's an incredible performance, and we want to continue that momentum. And I would just plead to you that now's not the time to stop putting gas in the tank. Keep doing that, keep investing that at a responsible level. I don't think we have to be irresponsible, but there's a couple of examples where I think we can continue to make an investment, and certainly applaud what the superintendent and his team have done to develop a budget that supports the educational goals and what they want to accomplish within the school district, and not take things for granted or take things off the table that could negatively impact that progress. One example of that is around the library aides. There's 22 positions right now that are in the balance, and maybe not the full-time employees because they could be repurposed in another role, but certainly that functional role within the school could be gone. And I know there are counselors right now sitting in front of me that have worked on the school committee and were involved in when the library media specialists were cut and they have not been replaced. So I think as the mother of a first grader who has a love of ships, specifically the Titanic, I think the role that his teacher and library aide have played in keeping him engaged and keeping him interested in reading, specifically at a really important time in his, as a new reader, has been really critically important. And I think there's really no other functional person within the school who will carry that torch forward other than a library aide or a library media specialist. But let's just start at the library aide first. I think, let's see, get back to my... I think, again, I just want to also acknowledge what the superintendent has done and his team have done with the budget, and looking at other opportunities and ways that we can more effectively spend the budget within the city, specifically around understanding the demand around the STEM Academy and increasing the budget there and some full-time employees there, as well as adding the day school, which will bring a lot of our special needs students back to the city and reduce our overall costs in time. So I guess I would say I'm looking to all of you to reconsider the budget. Do not approve it yet. Consider how you fund the school department. Certainly equity across all city employees when you're talking about pay increases. So that should include teachers as well as other city employees, something that's equitable, like Paul just spoke about as well. But overall, I think, just back to the original point, we're making good progress. I don't want to see that start to decline. And I think we owe it to our students and the parents and certainly our teachers to support them and the future growth and development of the city. Thanks.
Thank you. Just as a piece of additional information, Ms. Martin has a motion on for tomorrow night's school committee meeting, which will ask that the finance committee of the school committee get together with the city council finance committee to go over the maintenance of effort schedule. I think that's probably a worthwhile exercise to do, and so just a heads up that will be coming. Councilor Elliott, is there any further comments from the city council? Samaras.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy.
For the record, though, Mr. George is still here. I was never his boss. I tried to be, but it just didn't work out. He took me on a boat ride one day, and we resolved that, but not in his favor. We won't get into that. But, you know, I've been part of the Lowell school system for many years, and the first downfall was the facing Proposition 2.5 and the devastating effect it had on the school system and on the city of Lowell. And I've seen the ups and downs of a budget problem and how it affects programs. But I want to commend the city manager for what he's done to meet the net school spending. As everybody has stated, it's very, very important. But I understand where they're coming from, and, you know, honestly, you know, I wish I had an answer. I think we all wish we had an answer or a magic place to get some extra money. And I understand what the charter schools are doing. The formula just doesn't work in our favor. But, Mr. Manager, you have an excellent management team that's been working, that's really outlined a lot of issues and you've resolved a lot of problems on the city side. I'm just suggesting at this point, can the management team also work with their team at this point to assess, you know, the approach that they use for the budget, and perhaps some discussion could take place as to how to better fund, if we can look at the formula, certain formulas, and perhaps make some changes or suggestions that could lead to better funding the school department at the same time, not crippling the city side. I mean, it's not easy. I know that. I'm asking almost the impossible, but I'm basing my request on the good work that the budget team has done, your management team. I don't want to add to their workday. I mean, they've got enough to do on the city side. But I think some of the savings that were made, some of the adjustments were made to allow us to still continue to grow, to expand the police force, the fire department. Perhaps this could help in this effort. It's just going that extra step. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On May 30th, when we have the meeting and we go over the budget, once we start going line by line or department by department, we can never add to the budget. So I am asking, through the people that spoke here, if you could see it in your heart to just meet again and see if maybe you can find some money somewhere. I know that you've done a tremendous job with the school department and the maintenance effort, and I appreciate that, and you exceeded it every year that you were here. But I have concern with library aides, and you heard people speak. I know how important it is. Maybe it doesn't impact me, but it impacts people and their children. If you could just meet again, perhaps you could give us a supplemental budget that we could then add something in before we can't add anything on that day of the May 30th. So if you could take it upon yourself to meet with your team, as Councilor Samaras said, perhaps you could do that.
No, I thank you through you, Mayor. But one thing that we will be doing is we will be monitoring the budget throughout the fiscal year of 18, and we'll be working with school department to try and find sources to help whatever deficit that they may incur. You know, you can look at financing different ways, but the bottom line is that the school department is ready to receive $4.2 million more in their budget than last year. So it's a significant amount of money, and but we will certainly look to work with them during the fiscal year to see if there are efficiencies that are in the budget, any other revenue sources that may be able to be solicited if they do have some type of deficit. That you have my promise, we'll do that.
Well, what I'm concerned about is 22 library aides that stand a chance of losing their job, and I don't like to see that happen. That's my concern. Thank you.
Councilor, just as a point of information, I think that if Ms. Martin's successful tomorrow evening, which I expect that it will, there'll probably be a couple of opportunities for the Finance Committee of the City Council to meet with them and at least arrive at an understanding of how that schedule is put together and so that everybody understands what is what. I think that because it's such an old process that maybe there are areas where there are inefficiencies or monies that maybe shouldn't be there anymore. And so it's certainly worth a periodic look. I think you would agree with that, wouldn't you, Councilor Elliott?
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree. What I wanted to ask is when the joint finance subcommittees do meet, that both on the school side and the city side bring forward a report on those areas that have contributed, not only this fiscal year, but maybe even other fiscal years to the growth on the school side, because we do see some growth, albeit marginal, certainly on the state side with Chapter 70, and the cash contribution from the city. So I think it's important that we get into the details. What are those factors that are contributing to those costs that are increasing, and the deficit that's being that the cities, the school sides are experiencing. So I think it'll be a worthwhile discussion, Mr. Mayor, and I think it'll be important to have that information.
Thank you. Councilor Leary?
Just quick, I just want to echo what Councilor Elliott said. It's essentially, I appreciate you sitting down and working with the school side. You and I, Mr. Manager, we put our child through Lowell Public Schools, so we know the challenges that they face from a budget area. And many of us on the council did serve on the school committee when we went through the recession, and we actually cut the library media specialist because we really had no options at that point in time. And we used the library aides really to function essentially as the folks that are running the library media centers. So anything we can do to be proactive in that, I think is positive. Going through the net school spending areas are a good idea. In addition, I think looking at some of the issues in terms of the busing, I know the answer to it, but looking at the charter school busing costs and other costs, is there a way to look at fees and saving money by allocating to them as we allocate through the school department? Anything we can be creative and different, I think, would be a good idea. I do appreciate the budget that we're going through now. We just spent $2 million in reserves to make it a balanced budget, which is a significant issue in itself. So I appreciate taking a look at it and working with people. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this matter? Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. I just wanted to echo the work that you've done, Mr. Manager, over the last few years with supporting the school budget. I appreciate all the speakers tonight, and I agree with the speakers here tonight that, anything we can do to take a look at it. I think when that motion passes tomorrow, that'll be a good exercise for us to go through. Mr. Leary has made motions to compare and take a look at any jobs that can be combined, city side, school side, that could save us money, be more efficient at. So anything we can do, we would appreciate. We really appreciate the effort into it, but taking another look isn't going to hurt anybody, and we'll definitely take a look at it, and anything that the finance team can think of, anything we can take another look at, let's certainly do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Just one quick question through you, Mr. Manager, Mr. Mayor, to the manager. So as it stands now, the school department adopted a budget that currently carries an $800,000 deficit, short of, is that right, Mr. Mayor?
No, that isn't correct.
So they had to cut $3.3 million, and they cut 2.1.
The money that the school department's looking for, I think, is in the vicinity of probably $250,000, $300,000 for this year. The Senate just approved another $611,000 this year, so it's not as high as we originally thought.
So that 250 included the 600, the additional 600,000.
250, 300 would be what would be outstanding. That
Okay.
would be the money that you'd be looking for.
So I guess that speaks to my point. Before the Senate adopted, well, they haven't adopted that yet, and it hasn't been. I mean, that's going to go to conference committee, and that gap presumably will widen between what the House budget versus the Senate budget. Or, in your experience, Mr. Manager, does the Senate budget prevail when it comes to Chapter 70, or is there a compromise, or am I asking you to look into your crystal ball and pull the number out?
Mr. Manager?
I'm going to use a term that we don't use in our budgeting, but it's the Senate usually buys back that Chapter 70. So
Okay.
I would lean towards that the Senate version would prevail.
So the deficit that existed less the Senate presumably Senate budget, is between $250,000 and $300,000. Thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, we'll move on to minutes. We have 4 public hearings scheduled for 7 o'clock, so we'll just approve the minutes and then go to the 4 public hearings, just so that everybody understands what we're doing going forward. We have the minutes of the City Council meeting of May 9th, of the Youth Services Subcommittee of May 9th for acceptance. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes placed on file by Council Milonazo, seconded by Council Rourke? Discussion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. The first public hearing of the evening is from National Grid requesting installation of a joint-owned wood pole and anchor on Gorham Street. We'll open up the hearing for those who wish to speak in favor. In favor? In favor?
Good evening, David Boucher, Senior Designer, National Grid, 1101 Turnpike Street, North Andover, Mass. I have 4 of them tonight. Starting with Gorham Street, I believe?
Yes.
Okay. Bear with me, I'm going to pull it up here. On this particular one, we're asking for 1 new pole location, 27-90. We'd like to support our pole 28-90. It's part of our upgrade in order to provide electricity for the increased load in the city. We're running new wire down Carter Street. And if the city sees fit, it would enable us to place that new pole and support the poles that exist with the new wires that we want to place on them.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, we'll close the hearing on behalf of the proponents and open it up for those who wish to speak in opposition. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? In opposition, in opposition, in opposition. Hearing none, we'll close the hearing and open up the City Council. The Chair would entertain a motion to approve. Do we have a motion to approve by Councilor Mercy, a second by Councilor Milonazo?
Refer to the wire inspector.
Oh, I'm sorry. Refer to the wire inspector for a report and recommendation. By Councilor Mercy, a second by Councilor Milonazo. All in favor, all opposed, so voted. The next hearing of the evening is by National Grid. We request the installation of underground conduit on Thorndike Street. We'll open up the hearing for those who wish to speak in favor.
Once again, David Boucher from National Grid. On 145 Thorndike Street, we're asking in front of it in the public way, coming from our existing manhole 1315, to go underground into the property of 145 Thorndike Street, where we want to service a switchgear, which would enable us to provide higher amounts of electricity that's needed in that particular area. If the city sees fit, it would enable us to go forth with that project.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, we'll close the hearing on behalf of the proponents and open it up for those who wish to speak in opposition. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? In opposition? Opposition? In opposition? Hearing none, we'll close the hearing and open up to the City Council. Do we have a motion to refer to the wire inspector for a report and recommendation by Councilor Mercy, second by Councilor Milonazo? Discussion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. The next public hearing is by National Grid as well, requesting the installation of a joint-owned wood pole and anchor on Viola Street. We'll open up the hearing for those who wish to speak in favor.
Once again, Dave Boucher, National Grid. We have a number of locations here. First of all, on Market Street, pole 13-84 is a new pole location we're asking for. It is in conjunction with what's happening across the street, which is an upgrade of our electric lines. Also at pole 14, we're asking to relocate it. We're going to remove the one that exists and relocate it around the corner around Lewis Street, and that's for the upgrade and all the wires on the poles also. We've also got a location of pole 5, which is a new pole location on the corner of Hanover and Market Street. These are all under the same project where we're trying to increase the ability for us to provide electricity on this work request, and if the city sees fit, it would enable us to go ahead with the locations shown in the diagrams.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, we'll close the hearing on behalf of the proponents and open it up for those who wish to speak in opposition. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? In opposition? 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 Hearing none, we'll close the hearing and open up the City Council. Council Leahy.
Did we skip over Viola Street, or did you bundle?
Did I miss one? Try not to go too quick here. Viola Street.
Viola Street's what we're doing now. That's
Yeah, you
the
kind
serious
of
one.
jumped ahead.
It's the last one, actually.
Right, we're supposed to be on Viola Street. I think you jumped ahead.
Oh, I did. Okay, I must have done the wrong number.
That's all right.
We only had 2 left, and I picked the wrong one, I guess.
It's looking good for you anyways. I just like to let it go.
I had a question about Viola Street, so do we want to?
Okay, go ahead.
Viola Street's that one, yep.
Okay, so could you first explain what Viola Street is?
This is a dead end. Right at Viola and Stevens Street is where it's going to dead end, and what we want to do is end our wires right on this new pole location, and then guy it to the last pole, 67.
Okay. So my question there would be, what are we doing with all the double poles there first?
The one on Viola Street is actually a new pole location, so there won't be a double pole in that case.
But there's a bunch of double poles on Viola Street.
Oh, there are.
So
I
how
know that-
are we going to solve that first?
We do have a representative from the company that you can contact. I'm not sure if the council's aware, but I can give you a name and a phone number right now if you want to inquire about any of the double pole
All
situations.
right, why don't we just delay this until we know what we're doing with all the double poles, and then we'll end all the wires. We'll let's clean the street up before we finish with the
To be
last.
fair,
Did I second that motion?
to be fair, many of the poles that we may not be the ones that are, maybe other utilities that need to move, so it's
No, I know,
not
but
something
it's
that we
been a
can
long
control,
time,
but
and
I understand.
It's about time that street gets cleaned.
What I'll do, if you want to postpone one of these, the last 2, I don't know if.
Well, just this one, Viola
Just the Viola
Street.
one, okay. And I can give you the phone number, or if you have a card, I'll give it to
Well,
her
it'll
tomorrow
go
when
to
I see
really
her.
to the administration,
Okay.
but sure.
Fine, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Council Leahy, how long do you want to delay it for? 2 weeks or?
Yeah, 2 weeks until we get an answer.
Okay, then second by Council Leary to delay for 2 weeks. Any discussion on the motion to delay? All in favor, all opposed, so voted. And the final public hearing is, again, National Grid, request to install joint-owned wood poles and anchors to accommodate the Market Street Bridge reconstruction. We'll open up the hearing for those who wish to speak in favor. In favor.
That's me, Dave Boucher again, National Grid. The Market Street is the one with a number of different poles that I had previously explained about. Pole 14 would be a relocation. We're going to remove it and have a new location around the corner on Lowell Street. Along with that is new pole 13-84, which is there to support across the street. And along with that is new pole number 5 at the corner of Hanover Market. In addition to that, there's one last one I missed previously when I spoke, pole 14-50. And that's a new pole location, approximately 34 feet from that 14-50 is an existing pole, and where it's located at the corner of Suffolk and Market, and we're going to move it down Suffolk Street 34 feet. So it's a 1-for-1 there on Suffolk Street. And if the city sees fit, it would enable us to go forward with that.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in support? In support. Close the hearing for the proponents and open it up for those who wish to speak in opposition. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? In opposition, in opposition, in opposition. Hearing none, we'll close the hearing and open it to the city council. What's the pleasure of the council? We motion to refer to the wire. Council Milonazo, discussion. All opposed, so voted. And that concludes the public hearings. Council Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we suspend the rules and take motion 11.3 out of order, please?
Council Rourke is asking for suspension of the rules in order to take motion 11.3 out of order. If there's no objection, we'll do that by general consent. Hearing no objection, by general consent, we'll take 11.3 out of order, which is a motion by Council Rourke and Council Mercy. A request that the City Council have a discussion on eminent domain pertaining to 75 Arcan Drive and have a roll call vote pursuant to an order of taking. Council Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have had discussions with our solicitor. And also, Councilman Milanazo, if we get an opinion from Ms. O'Connor, Attorney O'Connor, for opinion on this motion, please.
Can she get a microphone, because people at home want to see this as well?
So, my understanding that the intent of this motion was to have the administration begin to take the steps necessary to properly bring an eminent domain vote before the council for future consideration. What was not intended by this motion was to have a substantive discussion this evening on the merits of a taking. Under these circumstances, it would be my recommendation that the council refer the matter to the manager and the law department for any potential action at the appropriate time.
Council Roy?
Yeah, I guess I would agree with that. In talking to a solicitor and to the co-sponsor of the motion, Councilor Mercer can speak to it as well. Don't want us to jeopardize anything, understanding what the solicitor was telling us prior to the meeting. I know that there are many speakers that have registered to speak in this tonight, and through Mr. Mayor to the solicitor, could those comments be also misconstrued or to be used towards what could or could not be used going forward?
I would think that if the motion's going to be referred to the city manager and to the law department for further recommendation or a recommendation at a future time, that it wouldn't be necessary for the speakers.
So then, Mr. Mayor, I'll move to
Council Mercy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But we did enjoy your presence here this evening, and I'm sorry that you came down for nothing, but we wanted the procedure to take place. We thought we could speak on it with being further advised by the solicitor. She advises us that we can only speak like one time. We can't speak today and another time, but we can, through the motion, ask the city manager proceed with the proper order and steps to solicit the vote when it comes. But today is not the day that we could do that. I'm sorry to invite you all down here for nothing, but I enjoyed seeing you very much nonetheless. Sorry.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? Council Rowley.
Well, I understand that's the case. I wouldn't even oppose, people came down, they take their time to speak on this, but I want to make it abundantly clear whether we're going to vote on this, we're not going to vote on this. We adopted a process. I believe in the process. I think that we should continue to the process. It's been a 3-year ordeal at this point, and we need to finish it through. We went through the SBA. We know what the requirements are, and let's stay the course, and let's just, whatever opinions we all have on this, it will continue. More information will come out. Debate is healthy. Lord knows that I'm all for good debate, but I just want to make it clear whatever opinion we're going to get, this has become so confusing in my opinion, and I just think it's important for the process to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? All opposed? So voted. Returning to to communications from the city manager, we have motion responses. This evening we have A through D. And so A is the Glen Ellen Road and Draper Street cleanup. Any discussion on item A? Council Leahy.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I'm involved. This was my motion, and thank you to the manager for the report. It is my understanding that it's ongoing, so I just wanted to make sure that we understood it's still ongoing. But I appreciate the response. Thank you.
Any further discussion on item A? If not, we'll move on to item B, trash fines collected. Any discussion on item B? Council Milanazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the city manager, if I could, I appreciate the report. You talk about getting the process restarted. I just want to stress that in the community where I now work, I mean, the dollars that they collect through fines is substantially higher than what we've been collecting, to date. So I'd be encouraged, if you will, to look at obviously a higher number going forward once we restart the process.
Mr. Manager.
We've established a list of frequent flyers, and we're going to be targeting them in a very aggressively.
Councilor Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Manager. Mr. Mayor, what would it cost for a homeowner to have an extra trash barrel or an extra recycle barrel? Do we know? For next week is fine. Just curious.
I don't know off the top, but we'll get, I'll let you know tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further? Any further discussion on item B? Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for the report. This has been an ongoing issue with the neighborhood groups. I know especially Centerville, back Central streets. This has been an ongoing issue with them. We appreciate you addressing this, and you know, we're making progress on this. Sometimes it doesn't go as fast as we'd like, but we are addressing this, and we're making progress, you know, to clean up the neighborhoods, and that's what it's all about, and that's what we hear about when we go to the neighborhood meetings. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Just real quick, Mayor, I think Lisa, the engineer, said it's $125, I think. Was that the answer to Councilor Rourke's question?
When the program first started with the toters, the price was $125. I'm not sure if it's gone up since then, but it would be at least that.
Thank you. Any further discussion on item B? All right, moving on. We've already done item C, and so we'll go to item D, the Lowell High School Geo-Environmental Hazardous Material and Traffic Summaries. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy, and I spent the weekend becoming an expert in geotechnical and hazardous materials. I'd like to first start with the geo-environmental findings of the existing Lowell High School site and the Colley site. We have engineers here this evening from all three specialties, and I would never profess to be an expert on all of the intricacies of their reports, but I'd like to at least just give what I think is a summary of the findings, and then any specific questions can be directed. First of all, at the existing Colley site, they recognized that there were two issues relative to that site. First of all, at the site of the former U.S. Petroleum, which is now being redeveloped, there was a storage tank in the ground that had some groundwater contamination. But according to their review, that stormwater, if it was going to migrate, it would migrate towards the parking lot of the alumni stadium, not towards where we're going to be constructing the high school. And basically, the only way that it would really disturb the soil and cause a problem is if we moved the location of where we're going to construct the high school closer to the USA Petroleum, and that's not going to happen. So that isn't really of great concern to the environmental engineer. The other concern, though, is that towards the Martin softball field, to the north side of the fence, is that when they filled in the land for the fields there, is that they have discovered that they use what was known as urban fill, and this is what was used in past years, is that you dump whatever you could in the hole to fill it in, be it metal, stumps, concrete, whatever. So what they've done is they've done a Phase 2 environmental report, and they believe that there is some concern for that area, but it's something that could be taken care of during the course of the construction, if that is the site that is chosen. And they're estimating that the cost of that is anywhere from $30,000 to $300,000 to remedy. That's the Colley site. Now, at the existing Lowell High School site, obviously, the first thing is that we did already discover that along the railroad tracks, the length of the high school is the arsenic issue. They have done further review. As you know, we've put up a fence to prevent the students from going near there. But they've done further research, And what they believe, and they're going to be submitting this abatement plan to the Mass DEP, is they believe that they have to excavate about a foot down of soil and replace that soil with good fill. They don't expect that to be an overwhelming task, but they estimate the cost to be under $50,000. And we won't be waiting to do that remediation. As soon as DEP approves the plan, we will find the funding necessary to do that remediation at the site. The other issue is on the Father Morissette Boulevard side of the site. That's where the athletic facility is and the Lord Building. Again, what they've done is they've found that there is urban fill. That used to be Merrimack Manufacturing, I believe, was the name of it. And obviously, there are some issues that would have resulted from the operations of that facility when it was there. Again, they've done the test, and they think that it's not overwhelming. That if construction commences there, then they will be able to abate any issues there, and they estimate the cost to be anywhere from $50,000 to $500,000, depending on the amount of fill that they find down there. So those are basically the summary of the findings by Nobis. The chief engineer, Steve Viteri, is here if there are any specific questions relative to this engineering study.
Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. Just when we talked about the Colley site with the fill, how do we, is that normal to have a range from 30 to 300,000? I mean, how do you make a decision on that? So how do we make a decision?
Sure. So, I think at this stage in the project, it's normal. It's on the order of magnitude. If I could just clarify something, that we have not yet done any investigation or sample collection from the Colley site. That's actually scheduled for tomorrow. So,
Okay.
so there's been the phase 1 assessment. That's when we identified the urban fill material in the northern part of the site. We'll have soil sample data tomorrow, and then results of that in the next week. Without knowing what's there and never having taken a sample, order of magnitude is about as close as we can get. If we encounter material that's similar to the material that's at the high school, or urban fill with common man-made contaminants that are typical of disposal of ash or metal or concrete debris, it's really we call it dirty dirt. It's not suitable for reuse on site, but it needs to go somewhere, and a lot of times that somewhere is as sort of cover material for a landfill. Not very restrictive reuse. But there's always the possibility that that when we're sampling the material to figure out where it can be brought off-site, that we find persistent contaminants that are more toxic than what we might expect. And that's the upper end of that range, is 300,000. And so, for example, if we find PCBs in the soil, we don't have any reason to look for them until we decide that we would like to reuse or dispose of that soil in a landfill. And the landfill is going to ask those questions. And so we will then need to analyze the soil that we bring off the site for a wide range of constituents. And if we happen to find some that are more toxic, then the price for disposal goes up. And it could go up by an order of magnitude. So there's two sources of error. If I could just finish, there's two sources of error in that number. One is the amount, the volume of soil that needs to be taken off the site, which is unknown and an estimate at this point. And the second is the cost of disposal per ton for that material. So if you consider those two sources of error, you end up with a pretty wide range, order of magnitude range for cost at this point.
So, okay, so in short, by June 13th, if that's the day we're making a decision, we're going to have a better idea.
We'll have a better idea. We won't have the 100% certainty idea until the soil is removed, or we have a volume of soil that we need to then relocate off-site. And so I have a feeling the project team will retain a wide range and a worst-case scenario on the upper end.
Okay. But how do, okay, I mean, this is a debate for another day, but how do we make a decision on It's too wide of a range. It needs to be limited down. That's what we're paying the feasibility study for, I would think. So I would like to have the best, obviously, we would all like to have the best range we could.
I understand.
By the time. Okay.
I understand.
I just have to, I apologize, I had them reversed. It's, the downtown site is 30 to 300, and the Colley site is 50 to 500, so I apologize, I had the right. And the Phase 2 will begin tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have a better
That's right.
estimate of the cost by the time a vote is taken.
Councilman Malinowski.
Thank you. Through you to the city manager. Again, I think those numbers are reasonable, especially when you're looking at a downtown site. And I think from the standpoint of what Council Leahy's talking about relative to cost, and we're obviously talking an enormous project here, and these numbers are, not that they're small or they're irrelevant, but at the end of the day, we'll have a better idea before the 13th as to what they are. But what I'm most impressed with, which really wasn't talked about in your presentation, Mr. Manager, is the final report of the existing hazardous material in the high school. Okay, they'll be coming up. Okay, because again, looking at that building, the 18th, and all of the testing and the subsurface work that they did do, and again, I'm pretty confident that the cost to remediate that, those costs are already in the budget. Again, I'll wait for further clarification. But if you look at what they're talking about relative to asbestos, relative to mercury, and so on, again, I've been involved in financing older buildings. And I was pleased with the result of this final report.
There are actually 3 reports that are before the council tonight. There's the Novus Engineering, which is the soil. We're going to do the hazardous materials at the existing site next, and then we'll do the traffic study third.
Any further discussion from the Council Leary?
Just a quick question. We're going to talk about the eminent domain, but the other site location, if that does become an issue, how do we know what's underneath that location? Would be able to go through the testing prior to a potential purchase, or because that wasn't tested, right? Or was it tested?
We haven't done any testing there at all.
Okay. So the process then at that point would be to do what? Prior to doing it, you would test it? Okay. All right. Thank you.
You all set, Councilor? Council Belanger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question now. These contaminant levels, there seems to be a lot of discrepancy here on unknowns. So in the end, if it's to the higher level of contaminants, what does that translate to? Does that mean it's not buildable? Does that simply mean it just costs more to dispose of? So where are we at? Because what I'm trying to allude to what Council Leahy is, we need to know costs when we make a decision. We need sort of a definitive dollar amount to factor in the grand scheme of things here, where this thing goes. So, I know you're doing it, but it's kind of not good enough. I'm sorry to say. I'm not saying you're not capable of doing your job, but we need more than that. I guess what I'm trying to translate to. And we'll be patient, but.
So the environmental contamination levels present have no impact on constructability of the project. Those are all issues that can be taken care of both sites. It's matter of fact, very common for any construction in an urban setting. You're going to find these types of contaminants. The levels that are on the site are not even typically that high compared to what's in many urban areas. So it's simply the cost to dispose off-site and the restrictions placed on what you can do with it off-site that's driven by the level of contamination.
Gotcha. Okay, so we can technically give now both locations a clean bill of health as far as environment and soil conditions, correct? Can we go that far?
There's going to be additional cost.
To remove, yes, I get it, to dispose of it.
Not an obstacle for construction on either site.
Right, so they're both built, okay, well, that's the good news.
It can be solved with remediation money.
Right.
And just to comment about the range. The range is wide,
Yes.
and there's a reason the range is wide, and the reason is that we don't go to the school site and look around for contamination that we don't believe is there. But when there's been random disposal or urban activity for centuries, sometimes you find things that you don't expect are there.
Yep.
And so
we understand that.
So we plan for that, and we assume the worst, and then most times, we get a better scenario than the high cost. But in my field, it's really problematic when we do not assume that there's a possibility that the worst-case scenario happens, and then it happens because that sidelines projects, that delays schedules, that blows budgets. So that's why there's the high number in our estimate and its order of magnitude. Knowing what we know now, which is not everything, we're probably on the lower end of those ranges. But that's not to say that it won't end up on the higher end of that range.
Okay, all right, that's very good. Thank you. So tell us a little bit on the history of the current location. Now, wasn't there a factory on that years ago? So that might have a little probability of being slightly higher, but nothing dramatic, correct? With that being said?
So we did 5 soil cores on the site. We collected 10 samples. Really, the only the issue was the arsenic along the railroad track. So the historical use of the railroad corridor there is, resulted in some arsenic contamination along that along the trail, the trolley line. The others were nothing that's atypical of normal urban fill. It used to be the Merrimack Manufacturing Mill. It was the upper northwest corner was the mill itself, the mill building itself, and then the rest of the parcel was row houses, tenement homes for the mill workers.
Oh.
Yeah. And there was a rail line that ran along the existing where the railroad is, and a spur that ran sort of between the 75 Arcan Drive parcel and the current high school. That's no longer there, obviously, but you can see remnants if you go back and look.
Okay, very good, very good. Now, lastly, on the Cawley site, now, the contaminants would be stemming from the gas station that's on the street? Is that what I understand?
So there's two. So you did a very good job explaining this, and I can expand. So there were, we did a phase 1 assessment. We have not yet done a phase 2 assessment. And the phase 1 assessment is historical research. It's purely a desktop study, and we identified 2 possibilities that there may be contamination on the site. And the first one, which I don't believe is a significant impact on a cost impact or constructability impact for the project, is the gas station. So there's it's 780 Rogers Street. There's a gas station. There was a release that's now being redeveloped. And there was a release from the tank. It has not been closed out with Mass DEP yet, but the most recent information that we've reviewed is that the extent of the contamination on that, it does not extend beyond the property boundary. So there's no, there's a possibility in the future, and technically as environmental professionals, it's our duty to identify that as a possible issue, because groundwater does flow from that parcel toward the parking lot to the south of the baseball diamond. But practically, it's not a concern for the project.
Okay, wonderful.
The second one is the fill, and so the urban fill is within the proposed footprint of the school, and of course then it would have cost impacts and construction impacts on a proposed school in that area.
Okay, excellent. And finally, how soon is it going to be before we have everything is complete and we have everything on our desks? Do you estimate?
When do you need to make a decision?
June 13th. It's a day that will go down in infamy in Lowell history.
It'll be before that. Well, we have a team out in the field tomorrow. We'll get data quickly, but probably by the end of the week, and we'll have something for the city manager's review
Okay, well,
by next
thank
week.
you. We need that as soon as, obviously, we'd like I made a motion weeks ago to have everything 14 days prior to the vote. Give or take a day.
Sure.
But we want to do outreach to the public. That's very important. No matter where this goes, they need to know, the public needs to know this. So the sooner the better, obviously. But thank you.
Understand.
Great clarification this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Councilor Elliott, then Councilor Mercia.
Thank you. Can you tell me what you found in the manufacturing in phase 1? What did they produce there?
Now you're testing my memory. It was a
was it
it was textile mill, and they would have used they might have used petroleum products in the processes and for heating.
Chlorinated solvents?
And possibly chlorinated solvents.
Okay.
We sampled for all of those in our assessment. We didn't find any evidence.
But you only took 10 samples on that entire site. Will you proceed with phase 3 before you submit these results?
Yeah, well, I think 10 samples on a site that size is about industry standard for an assessment. We didn't find any evidence. We screen every sample. We don't screen only the 10. We actually take several samples. We send 10 to the lab. So we probably screened 40 samples, and we didn't find any evidence of any volatile contamination. So we're confident at this point, based on what we've reviewed, that there wasn't a release of solvents.
On that particular case. I mean, your report is good, and I understand it's just a phase 2, but you do cite that there are PAHs and heavy metals throughout the site, and it could be between 5 and 8 feet. Are there landfills close by that you're going to be able to?
Yeah, sure. So those PAHs and metals are ubiquitous in the environment in urban areas.
I understand that, but there's still a cost. I mean, I understand that, but there's still a cost associated with it.
Absolutely, absolutely, yep.
Significant.
And the cost is articulated in the report, and it's for the management of that material. So that material, if it needs to go be excavated and go off-site, it can't just be reused anywhere. So there's going to be a cost associated with reuse.
And you cite that it cannot be. I mean, it's a school. There's not a shred of doubt that this stuff should be removed at any level.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. I think that answers my question. But you will not actually have, we will never have a firm, I want to be clear, these are the numbers that you're estimating. You're not going to do any additional testing until an option is selected and construction begins and you actually get into that site.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to, are you Steve?
Yes.
Steve, I'm very grateful for your report. Now, you assess and identify contaminants, right?
Correct.
Are you also the company that removes the contaminants?
We don't. We don't have own equipment, and we don't do the remediation ourselves. But we do. We do construction management.
So I'm kind of confused because I find this very hard to understand that you deal with contaminants, but yet you don't know the cost per ton to remove the fill or cost per ton to put clean fill back. You don't know that cost.
We can estimate
Yet you deal with this, and I don't understand how you don't know that.
So we can estimate the cost per ton. But before we estimate the cost per ton, we need to know the exact constituents, what's contained in the soil.
Well, before I get gas in my car, I know how much I'm going to pay per gallon, and you deal with this issue, and yet you don't know that. So do you think that before June 13th, we would have that cost per ton to remove the contaminants and cost per ton to fill it in case it amounts to a ton? Because I would like to know that.
We will not know the exact cost because we will not know the exact contents of the soil that's being brought off site. And so in our industry, typically we need to take samples of the material that's to go off site for a wide range of contaminants to determine which landfill it's suitable to be disposed in. And then at that point in time, then we'll know the exact precise cost per ton to dispose the soil. At this point in the project, we assume a range of potential costs based on a range of possible contaminant types and contaminant levels.
So different types of contaminants is different prices per ton to remove?
They vary widely from, it could be $50 a ton to $500 a ton.
So you can't pinpoint that? So we
I
never
can't-
would get a true picture of that, right?
It's not uncommon on a project like this. And if I could add to that, the range is also wide because at this point in time, we need to make gross estimates on the volume of soil that's going to be removed as well. So not only do we need to have a range of cost per ton, we need to have a range of the number of tons because we're not far enough along in the design to know exactly how much soil is going to be displaced by either of these options. We don't know necessarily where.
And it varies to whatever contaminants you're removing.
That's part of it as well. Correct.
Well, we're getting an education here this evening, aren't we? Because I didn't know
Best.
that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, very welcome.
Thank you, Council Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So according to this report, you have, Steve, the actual cost to remediate is cheaper at the downtown site than at the Collie site?
Yeah, so I've been referring to my sources of error, and one of them being the cost per ton for disposal. The second is the volume. So when we looked at these two options, we had to come up with some range of possibilities for each. And quite frankly, there's likely to be less soil displaced at the high school site than there is on a new construction at the Cawley site, just because we've already got a building with a basement, and we're already below grade when we demolish the building, whereas the Cawley site's going to need to have more soil displaced to put in a new building. So that's the discrepancy between the two costs.
Okay, so I guess the only outstanding variable, to Councilor Elliott's point earlier, is just once you get rid of that building, when you go underneath that to see what's there.
Yeah, I know. I would expect it would be similar to what's at the perimeter of it.
Okay. Did you guys do the testing at the UMass Boston garage that's going on now?
We did not. No.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Thank you. Mr. Manager?
The next is the hazardous materials identification study that was done by Ahmad Deeb of Universal Environmental Consultants. I've been receiving quite an education also. I now know what non-friable versus friable is. And Council Milanazzo, I agree with you, is after reading the report and talking to our engineer, is there are issues, but they are issues where the current student population is safe in the school, and there are issues that can be managed and dealt with from a construction standpoint. Mr. Deeb is here. If you could just come to the microphone. Can you just give a brief summary of your tests and then any questions that the councilors may have?
Sure. My name is Amar Deeb, President of Universal Environmental Consultants. Good evening, everyone. The staff at Universal Environmental have been providing hazardous material consulting services, or HAZMAT, since 1988 and have worked over 1,000 buildings, and I'll say probably at least 400 to 500 school buildings. As part of the feasibility study at the Lowell High School, we were fortunate and honored to be retained by Perkins Eastman Architects to provide hazardous material consulting. At the same time, we have submitted a proposal to them, and that proposal is in full compliance with the Massachusetts School Building Authority guidelines. The MSBA requests certain type of tests to be performed for hazardous material. We had licensed asbestos inspectors and other inspectors on the site. We spent at least a month and a half. We completed a complete survey for accessible hazardous material in the building. We collected over 350 samples. We sent all the samples to independent laboratories. When we received the results, we prepared the report that in turn we submitted to the architect, and probably most of you have seen this report. As included in this report is type of material found, whether it's asbestos, mercury, radon, and other building material, location of the building material, and cost estimate for remediations. Since we are not familiar with exactly what's going to happen with this building, and as I have done with many, many school projects for MSBA, we included the worst case scenario when it comes to cost. So let's say you decided to really demolish the entire building, and we included that cost. Because there are certain type of material, there is no way for us to find it right now. We would need to perform destructive testing on the outside. And the majority of the cost in our report, it's really exterior of the building. So let's say you decided to save the building or renovate it, the cost will definitely be reduced significantly. But again, we are early stages, and I can't really speak much until we, the city, the OPM, and the architect, and the construction manager decide on the route that they want to take. I want to tell you that based on what we have found, okay, the school department has maintained the building in excellent condition. In 1988, late President Reagan introduced regulations signed into law, what's called the Environmental Protection Asbestos Hazardous Emergency Response Act, AHERA, that requires school buildings to conduct inspections for asbestos-containing material, implement a management plan that include quantities, conditions, and response actions. 99.9% of the material that we found in the building are considered non-friable. Friable means like if you're in a basement, you have a pipe, you have that white material that could be easy crumbled. 99%, actually more than 99% of that insulation has been removed, with the exception one storage room we found 20 linear feet of that pipe insulation. So everything remaining in the building are well intact, well maintained, and based on the report, there's absolutely nothing we found, whether it's asbestos or radon or mercury or mold, that would require an immediate health concern to building occupants.
And I just to reiterate for the council, when you conclude at the end a cost of $4.2 million to remediate it, that's the worst case. That's as if we were going to raise all of the buildings. But if the answer was to renovate the buildings, that cost would be less than 4.2.
I'll say will be, if you decided to leave the outside shell of the building and we can only renovate the interior, I'll say probably the cost will be about 2.5 million.
Okay, thank you.
It all depends, again, the scope of work, but I want to give the architect the worst case scenario for the city and for the MSBA to approve.
Thank you. From the council, Council Leahy.
And this is, we're only talking the oldest building, the Kirk Street building, right? Because basically the other buildings are new and wouldn't have any asbestos in them.
I mean, we found asbestos in every building.
Even the newer buildings?
Well, see, people, this misconception that 1988, the APA forbade the use of asbestos. That's not true. The only thing they forbade the use of friable asbestos. You still can go right now, I don't want to scare everybody, to go Home Depot and buy floor tile that is asbestos.
Oh, okay.
So, but the majority of the cost, again, I was going to say, it really was on the exterior. We had to make a lot of assumptions. We don't want to go ahead and make holes, make a Swiss cheese the building, unknowing what's going to happen. Let's say you decided, we're going to demolish the entire building. Then we're going to request from the architect to do a lot of destructive testing. We already did that in March and April. We didn't find anything. So that was great news, okay?
All right, so I'm just a little confused. So
Okay.
we're gonna razz the huh? No, we're gonna take down the huh? No, not the Lord, but the field house. So we're taking that down, right?
Yes. The cost for the field house alone is 2.4 million.
Okay. So what about the Lord building?
The, which one there? Oh, the
Lord building.
Oh. That's the 1997, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
1980.
Oh, 1980, okay. Is that the Freshman Academy? I'm sorry, no, which building is that?
It should say 1980 building.
The
Okay.
building that's on the same side of the
Oh,
canal
okay.
is the...
Yeah, we included the Cochrane, the Carbon, and the 1997 edition is 1.1 million. But the majority of the cost, almost 400,000, it's for outside. That may not exist. Okay. We don't think it does exist, but again, I want to make sure that the number I give them, there's no change orders, there's no, we need more money.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion?
Yes,
Councilor Samaras.
Thank you. In 1997, thereabouts, there was $40 million of renovation that happened in the 22 building, Coben building, and the Lord building, and some repair in the gymnasium, okay? The 22 building, there was a lot of work in removing asbestos, especially on pipes,
Correct.
exposed piping, what have you. Have you found any of the reports from that time period, or in your assessment, would you say that whatever happened during 97, there was a reasonable care in removing asbestos, or what did you, in other words, do you think there was a difference because there was a removal of materials?
The majority of the asbestos that they indicated that they removed, they did remove it.
Okay.
For the building of that size, there should be 1,000 and 1,000 linear feet of pipe insulation. We found 20. Okay. I mean, my basement has more than 20. So it is absolutely, they spend the money well, they maintain the school very well. And as part of AHERA, so there are two types of regulations. There's AHERA regulations and there's NESHAP regulations.
Okay.
AHERA, you only inspect what you see. And that's only for asbestos. NESHAP regulations, you have to inspect for everything. You have to make holes, you have to dig under the rubber flooring, you have to see what's behind the wall, everything that could be concealed, that could be found during demolition. And we have done most of that. We haven't done 100%, but I say we are almost close to 90% done with the except for selective exterior. But yes, you can say, I mean, definitely the money was well spent, no question about it.
The Lord Building, that building was built in 1980, but I think it was built during a time when the cheapest of materials were used.
Yeah, I mean, you got the rubber flooring, that's mercury, and you got the exterior panels. These are like, probably a lot of houses, you see them, they are shingle, transite. It's the entire building, so, and plus flooring tiles. There was a lot of flooring tiles. So, again, even 2017, the EPA still require us to inspect buildings that were inspected, I mean, they were built yesterday, because they still allow the use of asbestos.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Is that Council? Council Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, question I have is just for clarification, because this is something that we often hear emails from constituents about the asbestos remediation of the 1922 building, the Kirk Street building, obviously being built 100 years ago. Now, sir, please reiterate that asbestos remediation in that old building is $2.5 million. Is that what I gather, sir?
That's including the exterior, if you decided to demolish the entire building.
Wow.
The majority of the cost is what we might find on the exterior of the building.
So,
and again, these are...
You're saying worst case, only $2.5 million in that whole building?
Yes. Oh. Which one is the, I'm sorry.
I'm talking the 1922 building, the Kirk Street building. The yellow.
Oh, okay. No. Yeah, I mean, I have it. Sorry, I'm not too familiar with the names and everything, I mean, we have...
Thank you very much, ma'am. So,
we
sir,
have it,
there is a difference here, I mean...
yeah, I mean, we have it as
Got to get this right, because...
1.1 million.
1.1?
Yes. That's the building, right?
That doesn't sound right either.
Okay, we have the Cochran's Carbon and the 1997 edition, 1.1. We have the Lord Building and the Field House, 2.4. We have the Freshman Academy, 460,000. We have the steam plants, 123,000. So here we go. Yeah.
Is that Mr. McGovern? You're not Mr. Manager? Very little clarification here. That's all. Okay, I mean, that's evidently good news. I think we were all expecting a far higher dollar amount than that. And
they have removed...
That's
Well,
very important.
I think the point that he was making... I think the point that he was making is that there has been remediation efforts at these buildings previously, and that's what lends to the report not being as bad as
Right,
as Ahmad told me when he first went in there, he expected buildings of this age to be more, but the remediation that has previously occurred has limited the amount of money that we'd have to spend on this.
Okay, so in particular, Councilor Samaras is under his tutelage there, and, okay, under his tenure. All right, so, okay, well, that's, all right. Again, I'm alarmed. It's very low, but okay, because the report is damaging. It seems that it's all over the place when you look at the report, but I guess in essence, it's not that bad. Okay, I just wanted clarification on that. That's very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion?
Thank you, Ahmad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Manager?
And the next is the traffic study. That we sent you a summary and then the full version of the traffic study. This is relative to the amount of trips, as you saw. Obviously, traffic is going to be an issue at any site that is chosen by the City Council. I think the great thing about this traffic study, though, is the remediation efforts, or the suggestions in the traffic study that the engineers have given to alleviate some of the traffic at whatever location that it goes on. I know you have a brief presentation on the traffic study, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, if you could do that, and then you can have some specific questions from the councilors.
Yeah, there it goes.
Okay, thank you. So as you said, we did do a traffic study for both of the locations that are under consideration. Obviously, everyone's familiar with where they are, but I have a little map kind of just detailing where they are. The existing downtown site as well as the Cawley site. Just a little background information. The existing school population currently has around 3,250 students with around 440 staff. The projections for the school is up to 3,520 students and about 500 staff. So there would be obviously an increase in traffic based on those numbers. Some of the unique features of the existing high school, it's centrally located in the downtown area. A lot of the students use public transportation to get to school. There's no actual on-site, or there's very minimal on-site parking. Most of the parking is off-site. So when we started working on this, we worked very closely with the city transportation engineer to come up with the scope to try to make sure we're looking at the right areas, the right intersections. We did an extensive center traffic counts, both downtown, around the existing high school, and at the Cawley site. We went out and looked at the operations and the infrastructure several times. We also coordinated through Perkins Eastman with the high school administration to do some surveys of the students and staff to determine how they actually get to school. Obviously, there's lots of different ways. Like I said, public transportation, walking, getting dropped off, driving themselves. So at the downtown site, it's centrally located. There's different routes to get there, but there is some congestion. Obviously, typical for a school, especially with this many students. But it's typically pretty short duration for the drop-off in the morning and the pickup in the afternoon. So there's, in terms of the additional traffic in the area of the downtown site, it's actually less than 10%. And it's pretty much going to operate the way it does now. There won't be any significant changes. And the city is actually undergoing some projects currently to do some improvements. They're looking at some pedestrian accommodation upgrades at Bridge Street and French Street. Actually, which is over, obviously, to the right on that slide. They're looking at doing some traffic signal retimings to kind of optimize the operations of the area. And for the Cawley site, there are some existing issues now in terms of traffic. There's some at the Andover Street top portion of the slide. There's a lot of traffic on Andover Street. And coming out of Douglas Road and Clark Road, there's some delays to turn on to Andover Street. And the way that this site, the way it's situated in the city, is that it's on the eastern portion of the site. So there's actually, compared to the downtown site, there's actually fewer access points. So we looked at taking all this traffic, and it'd be the same whether it was an office building or another use. You're going to have a lot of trips because of the amount of students that are going to be going to the school. And we used the surveys that we had done, or that the school administration had done, to kind of determine how many trips there would be, both vehicles. There will have to be a bus program that the city will have to do to actually get the students to the site. And based on that, there is going to be an increase in delays, as you'd expect. But again, it's going to be a relatively short duration on the school days in the morning and in the afternoon. The other portion of what we have done is kind of looking at some of the potential mitigation, both for operationally in terms of intersections. And you can actually, there's some things that you can do. You can do some signal retiming for the signals on Rogers Street. That would require coordination with Mass DOT, of course, because that's a state roadway. Possibly looking at added turn lanes on some of the side streets. We also looked at, we actually did an extensive review of the area on Douglas and Clark, looking at existing sidewalk that was there and also looking at areas that didn't have sidewalk. Based on the fact that there will be students walking, if the site is selected, there would be students walking to the school, that we recommend actually putting sidewalks in on both Douglas Road and Clark Road for students to actually get to the site. As well as doing some other signal upgrades for pedestrian accommodation so that they can actually cross the street more safely as well. That's pretty much it.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilman Milanazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly appreciate the report. If I could just follow up on a couple of comments that you made regarding the investing in intersection improvements as well as sidewalk and other pedestrian improvements to the surrounding roadways. I'm talking about the Colley site. If we ended up doing turn lanes, as an example, Rogers Street onto Douglas Road, a left-hand turn lane, would you anticipate a right-of-way taking that would need to be required there?
At Rogers Street, they mostly likely would require right-of-way taking, yes.
Okay, right-of-way taking. Okay, thank you. Again, when you talk about pedestrian sidewalks on Clark Road and on Douglas Road, I assume you're talking about one side of the street?
Yeah, mostly cost effectively, you wouldn't need sidewalks on both sides. You probably would have it on one side or the other, and potentially you might have to cross back and forth, and you might need some crosswalks to accommodate that.
And again, we're talking about the safety of the students in relative to the sidewalks. So again, with the sidewalks, we'd be talking about land takings, most likely because the right-of-way, especially on Douglas Road, does not, in my opinion, go into much of the property of the houses along Douglas Road. So they'd probably be land takings of some front yards along Douglas Road.
Potentially. It hasn't been looked at this point, but potentially there could be.
Okay. Now, there is a sidewalk, I believe, on the easterly side of Clark Road for a short period of time until you get into the town of Tewksbury. Again, it needs to be improved because the trees and the roots have brought those sidewalks into disrepair. So, again, my concern is obviously Douglas Road. My last question has to do with a light. You mentioned that there'd be no need for a light at Andover and Douglas Road, but you felt that the Clark and Andover Street intersection would warrant a traffic signal. Is that correct?
It potentially could warrant a traffic signal at Andover and Clark.
Okay.
Yes.
And we're putting a pedestrian signal at Douglas and Andover. Okay. Okay. Again, I certainly appreciate this information. I think that it opens my eyes, if you will, to what would need to be done, especially as it relates to the Colley site. Have we projected any costs with any of these recommendations?
Mr. Manager.
What we're doing is, we've just received this traffic study on Friday, I believe it was. So Lisa DeMeo, the city engineer, and Nick Bossinetto working together to look at the recommendations and come up with a cost analysis and an estimate prior to the vote on this matter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Suggestion, then I have a question. Mr. Mayor, the suggestion is to you. I'm wondering if your office should reach out to perhaps Jonathan Gear of the Belvedere Neighborhood Association about having a special neighborhood group meeting to, to exhibit this and let the residents know that, they need to know this. This is part of our outreach. It's just an idea or thought, unless anybody has a better one. But I think we need to get this information out there ASAP. And lastly, Mr. Mayor, through you to the speaker, can you elaborate a little more? I mean, again, as I alluded to earlier, constituents often email us on the sidewalk issue with the Colley site. Obviously, there'd be kids walking up and down Douglas Road. Can you clarify the point to where it requires that we need sidewalks? And do you recommend furthering that point? Where do we stand with that? It's very important because Douglas Road, when you take, where the guardrail is there's a bend and it's very narrow and it's very dangerous. We cannot have kids walking at that point if, in fact, that is the site. So that is concerning to a lot of people. So where do we stand with the sidewalks? What is the basically cutoff point that it's required, and what are you recommending, I guess? Please.
So in terms of requirements, I wouldn't say there's actually any specific requirements, but it's certainly our recommendation that the sidewalk be provided. Like you said, you don't want, especially in some of those areas, you don't want students walking in the roadway.
I think I'm pretty certain there's a 1,000-foot requirement, Mr. Manager, is there not, for sidewalks?
That's for private schools, for private schools, no. But what the MSBA requires is just sidewalks on the footprint of the site. So
it doesn't extend 1,000-foot? Why do I have that in mind? We've talked
well,
about
no,
this.
we do have an ordinance, but that doesn't apply to public schools. It was intended for the charter schools that were being developed and everything, so the 1,000 feet doesn't, but
Okay.
that would only get you to Wynwood anyway.
I understand that, right.
Yeah,
Right
but I'm
about-
just saying
Right
is
about
that-
where I'm talking about, yeah.
Oh, I know, but I'm just saying, the MSBA just requires that the sidewalks be at the footprint of the building where it's going to be located. We're going to give you a cost analysis of what it would take and how much it would cost to extend it from the footprint of the building up Clark Road and up Douglas Road.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Yep, thank you, I would like to know that, okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Leary.
Just, I guess the dumb question is, why would a private school have 1,000 feet and a public school not have 1,000 feet? But we can take that up later, like next week later. The question I have for the traffic engineer, do we look at different streets outside of Douglas Road in terms of, like, I guess really, I think some streets really, Buttman Road, further back into the neighborhood, as you see, there's Douglas Road on that side. Did you look into some of the streets behind there to see if there were any issues there in your report and your analysis?
No, our scope is limited primarily between Rogers and Andover, and Douglas and Clark, so that area in there, so we did not look outside of that area.
Okay, and just as an overreach, I think Councilor Milanazzo said we're putting up a yellow blinking light at Douglas, obviously for the Sullivan and the Riley. When you said a traffic light at Clark, why would you not put a traffic light at Douglas?
This is Andover Street.
Yeah, Douglas would be the first, if you're looking at this map, it'd be the first street, the left, and Clark be the right. Why would you put a traffic light at Clark as opposed to Douglas?
So the guidelines for installing traffic signals is what they call traffic signal warrants, and they're based on the amount of traffic that is actually on the roadways, both on the major road, in this case Andover, and the minor streets, which would be Douglas and Clark. There's different warrants. Some are based on 8 hours of the day, some are based on 4 hours. There's other warrants as well, and that based on our analysis, Douglas and Andover does not meet those criteria for the installation of a traffic signal. The existing traffic at Clark and Andover is to the point where it may justify those traffic signal warrants. That's with existing traffic.
Existing traffic, okay, good to know, thank you.
Is that, you all set, Council? All right, Council Milanazzo?
Thank you. Just one final question. Parking at the Colley site, did I see a number in here of 850 parking spaces?
I believe the latest site plans that have been generated show approximately 850 parking spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Council Samaras?
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. I mean, what's happening now, I believe we're getting what I call real information that's important for people to hear. Mr. Manager, at some point, should we look at revisiting all of the neighborhood sites with this information prior to our vote? Or do we have another major, I mean, people who are watching television now are getting to understand what the process is. But I would like to have it where we allow our citizens to have some questions and bring up questions before we make the final vote. Is that possible?
Yeah, well, we did provide a schedule where we have actually 3 public forums scheduled. One here in the council chamber, and then 2 in the public, one on a Saturday at the Cyrus Irish Auditorium, and then another day at the Senior Center. So we do have 3 public forums scheduled already for input from the...
That would be with the complete presentation of everything that's being planned.
Yeah.
If we could possibly look at,
sure,
maybe a couple more. I think people are ready to really listen to this information. I mean, because the information is real, as it can be at this particular point. But I think this would just make for a better decision down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further? Councilor Leahy?
Just one more clarification. Is the light at Clark Road a necessity or a suggestion?
It's, when you look at these warrants, it's guidelines, so it actually just gives you
Guidelines.
information. It's not a requirement by any means, no.
All right, thank you.
Any further discussion? Yeah, I just have a couple of questions if I could. When you say guidelines, do you mean recommendations?
Based on these guidelines, what you would do is you would look at a lot of different things. The warrant, obviously, or the warrant analysis is important, but you also look at some of the delays. You might look at safety, if there's a lot of crashes, if there's a lot of different things you look into, and then based on all this information, you would come to a recommendation either to install it or not install it.
And so, could you tell us geographically where the sidewalk should go on Douglas and on Clark? In other words, I'm assuming they go to Roger Street. How far down do they go? And do you know how many linear feet they are combined?
I believe, so it would pretty much be, can you look for a continuous route from Andover to Rogers, because you're going to have students walking from both directions. And I believe that the linear footage in our report is 12,000 linear feet, I believe. 12,000, yeah.
Is that combined both streets?
Yes.
Yep.
And I think also on Village Street as well.
Okay. And do you know, Roger Street is Route 38, so that's a state highway.
Yes.
And Andover Street is 133, also a state highway. So if there are lights that need to be installed, who pays for those?
So to clarification, I believe that Roger Street is definitely a state highway. I believe that Andover is actually under the city jurisdiction, even though it is a
That segment of it is, I mean, it's
so.
Route 133, but, yep, okay. So what does that mean?
So in terms of paying, if there was a need for an existing need for a traffic signal on a state highway, there is a potential, I think, to petition, I guess, the state to have something done. On the local road, it would be the city.
All right, so on Andover Street, we would have to pay, the city would pay. On Roger Street, maybe that they would pay, but on Roger Street, that segment of Roger Street on Route 38 is going to have, if you add another light at Village Street, which I think is what the recommendation is.
Actually, clarify, again, that we also looked at Village Street and Roger Street, and that intersection also does not meet signal warrants.
You think you don't need a signal there?
Based on our analysis and looking at the warrants, yes, that's correct.
A follow-up, just
Thank
maybe
you.
I'm
Councilor Leary.
not the brightest guy, but isn't that the entrance to the school?
Yeah, we're going to,
So wait,
Nicholas, can
so
you just?
it's a yes or no?
Well, no, I mean,
Yeah,
the issue is, when you do a warrant, you look at the intersection the entire day.
Yeah, I know. I
So
get that part.
but now if the location was going to be there, obviously for that period of time in the morning, when the children are coming, and when that period of time in the afternoon when they're leaving, there's going to be significant traffic. So what we're doing is we're taking this traffic study, and based upon the recommendations, Mr. Bossinetto is going to be making recommendations to us as what he feels is necessary to alleviate any traffic. Can you just briefly explain that for what you're going to be doing, Mr. Bossinetto?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, Council, so this traffic study, first of all, I just want to thank the team from Bryan Associates. A very well written, very well done traffic study. So we really want to thank them. There's very good information there. The information on the traffic study is just the basic information. The ultimate decision is, of course, up to the city. That section of Route 38 is MassDOT. And the intersection at Douglas and Route 38 will be going from a B to a D, I believe, with the build condition. So MassDOT's definitely going to have an interest in what we're doing to their system. And they're the ultimate arbiters of what gets done or if it gets done as far as, building a new intersection or building signals. So my recommendation is we contact MassDOT as soon as possible and get the process started, because it's their highway. It's their signal. So we have to work with them to get good, solid recommendations on what will be done.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's our entrance, right? And every school I've seen that I've driven around 1 million high schools now in neighborhoods, they all have something set up at the entrance. So I'm not in my full function capacity at a really bad cold, but man, that seems to me would be like a no-brainer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion from the council? Mr. Manager?
And that's the presentation of the 3 reports that we have to date. Again, we have a lot of work to do relative to cost estimations, and we'll continue to do that and keep the city council informed as to these issues. But we're going to be relying a lot on Mr. Bostonetto and Mr. Mayo to make those cost estimations.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. The chair would entertain a motion to accept the communications from the city manager, placed on file by Council Milonazo, seconded by Council Mercy. Discussion, all in favor, all opposed. Next on to votes from the city manager. The first is to authorize the city manager to amend the license agreement for the ATP restaurant. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full reading and go to the second reading. Authorizing the city manager to execute amendment number 2 to license agreement between the City of Lowell and the ATP Restaurant Incorporated, doing business as Cobblestone's Restaurant, for use of a portion of city property adjacent to the premises at 91 Dutton Street in Lowell for the purpose of extending their existing sidewalk seating onto the public way during special events when the city closes the adjacent street and/or public way. Do we have a motion to approve by Council Milonazo, seconded by Council Rourke? Discussion, roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Belanger.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Leary.
Yes.
9
Yes.
yeas.
Next is a vote authorizing the city manager to execute a temporary and permanent easements regarding bridges over canals. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading, go to the second reading. Authorizing the city manager to execute temporary and permanent easements relative to the city's acquisition of the Enel bridges and in furtherance of the Tiger project. We have a motion to approve. Motion to approve by Council Milonazo, seconded by Council Rourke. Discussion, Council Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the city manager, in your transmittal letter, you indicate the city will need to compensate the private property owners for temporary and permanent. Do you have any idea of the costs of that? Again, I support the vote. I'm just wondering about the cost.
Right. Not at this time. They're still in the process of being appraised. However, most of the parcels that we're talking about are very small in dimensions, and so it's just in narrow areas where the footprint extended into private property.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Belanger.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Leary.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next is a vote to transfer $51,000 in funds to purchase a police vehicle.
Tiger branch.
If there's no objection, we'll waive the first reading and go to the second reading to transfer $51,000 in funds to purchase a police cruiser. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Motion by Council Leahy, second by Council Samaras. Discussion, roll call.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Belanger. Yes. Council Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Leary.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
A vote filing special legislation regarding the charter school reimbursement. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading, the first reading, go to the second reading, authorizing the filing of special legislation to require a 100% charter school reimbursement in Lowell. Do we have a motion to approve by Council Leahy, second by Council Elliott? Council Elliott.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a good resolution. I think it's important that we send this piece of legislation down, this home rule petition. We just had a discussion on the budget and some of the costs that contribute to the increase in our expenses, both here on the city side and, well, not so much on the school side, but, one way or the other, this is public education. And doesn't matter what position anyone has on charter schools, the fact of the matter is cities like Lowell and Boston and Malden, and the list goes on, have charter schools, and we shouldn't be punished, quite frankly, for having charter schools in the district or in the city. So, the city funds 17 million, is that correct, Mr. Manager, Mr. Baldwin? Is it 17 million this year? 10 million of which comes from the city coffers.
The cherry sheet charge in fiscal 18 for charter schools was $22.3 million.
I stand corrected again.
And that has increased from about $15 million in fiscal 15.
Okay, I wasn't
With
too
a
far.
declining reimbursement.
And the city's share of that $22 million to fund the charter schools is what this year?
The reimbursement is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $3 million or so, give or take. So the
So
difference,
it's-
almost $19-20 million.
That we don't get reimbursed from, and they're public school children, and that is the problem. That's why I brought this motion forward, to send a home rule petition down, and, you know, I know there's some amendments, many amendments were disposed of in the budget process, but that being said, there are many communities that are experiencing this as well. So, I think I made my point. I think it's important that we send this down, that it's public schools, they should be funded at 100%. The formula does need to change, and, you know, we work day in, day out to grow businesses, attract businesses, expand the commercial tax rate to minimize, and, well, for new growth, to minimize the impact on taxpayers, and in one fell swoop, you know, it doesn't go out the window, but my point is that those revenues are immediately consumed by something we have no control of. So I'm going to stop there, Mr. Mayor. We have to educate, and we should educate every child, but it's just wrong when we have little to no control over these finances, and we're expected to absorb this unfunded mandate, if you will. And I think we need to take charge and be a leader on this, and get other communities, and I know there are other communities that'll participate. So that's the end of it, Mr. Mayor.
So, thank you, Councilor. So you'll recall that when we initiated this process for this special legislation, part of the discussion was about joining with other communities, as you just mentioned. And I think that if we're going to be successful and we're going to have a meaningful campaign to do this, I think we really need to do that. So if there's no objection, what the mayor's office would be happy to do would be to put a letter together asking other communities to join with us and attaching a copy of the special legislation for them to look at. And hopefully we can build a coalition that would be large enough to have the general court pay close attention to this issue.
I think that's a great idea, Mr. Mayor, and first of all, call attention, knowing amendments have been filed, and guess what, here we are, we're looking for your help, and coalition is a great idea.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on this? Roll call.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next is vote for the timely receipt of the fiscal 2018 municipal budget. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading and go to the second reading. Pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 32, the City Council of the City of Lowell acknowledges timely receipt of the city from the city manager on May 16, 2017, of the recommended budget for the City of Lowell for fiscal year 2018, with the understanding that any recommended revisions as may be submitted by the city manager at a later date and prior to the date of the final approval of said budget by the City Council shall collectively be considered the proposed budget for fiscal year 2018 for the City of Lowell. A public hearing on the budget shall be advertised from the Sun on May 19, 2017, to be held on Tuesday, May 30th, 2017, at 7 p.m. in the City Council chambers, and on such other dates and times if necessary, and may be publicly announced by the City Council. Do we have a motion to approve? Motion approved by Council Milonazo, second by Council Samaras. Discussion? Roll call.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
9 yeas.
All right, next we have a vote approving the budget for the city of Lowell for fiscal year 2018. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading. And the second reading would be approving the budget for the city of Lowell for fiscal year 2018. The chair would entertain a motion to refer this to a public hearing by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Larry. Discussion, roll call.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next on the orders of the city manager, we have an order for a 60-day trial. For different experimental regulations. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full first reading and move to the second reading pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances in the City of Lowell, Massachusetts concerning Section 266-6 thereof, entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations. Temporary traffic regulations are hereby implemented for a period of 60 days. Do we have a motion to approve? By Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Samaras. Discussion, roll call.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
9 yeas.
And next, we have an ordinance amending Section 272-87 entitled the Annual Sewer Use Charge. If there's no objection, well, that will be the full first reading. We refer this to a public hearing for May 30th, 2017 at 7 p.m. Do we have a motion to that effect by Councilor Samaras, seconded by Councilor Rourke? Discussion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Next, under subcommittee reports, we have the Finance Subcommittee for May 16, 2017. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Finance Subcommittee continued to meet. We held our third meeting, a series of meetings relative to costs and financing and on businesses relative to Lowell High School. And tonight we held a meeting on the debt limit, the debt and the debt service on current city debt and potential impact of the Lowell High School. Again, a report was presented by the Chief Financial Officer and his assistant and Mr. Healy as well on exactly where we are in the city with our debt and, again, the impact that will have. And this report, again, like all other reports, will be on the website for those folks that want to take a look at it. And I think it's an informative report. We won't go through the entire report, but of interest that we did learn tonight, not to get into the weeds too much, but the process is cities have there's a limit on how much debt that cities can bond, and we have our limit as well, and we are not close to it. We can bond up to $357 million. The city currently is at about $320 million, so there's plenty of opportunity for borrowing capacity for the Lowell High School, and that we currently have about $135 million that's available. There is some debt outside of the general fund for sewers and for water, for those enterprise funds, but that is not calculated as part of our unused debt limit. So there was discussion, further discussion, by members. Some questions were raised. Typically, the city of Lowell and other communities, it's recommended that by our financial advisors, Standard & Poor's and Moody's and Bond Council, that about 3% of the city's expenditures should be for debt. And we're about 3.3%. Again, our ceiling is $357 million. We've encumbered $320. But moving forward, the finance team they're looking at strategies. They're looking at financial options to move forward on how to fund both during and after construction. To be considered, whether it's bond anticipation notes to minimize the impact and to certainly meet our cash flow. I think it was important to note that we will be receiving a reimbursement from the state on an annual basis until they pay their share, and we will make sure that our financing strategy is parallel with that. So right now, our debt service on an annual basis is about $10 million in this fiscal year budget. Interesting to note that Lowell High School, just the debt service on a Lowell High School could be there's an average of about $8 million. There is excess levy capacity available to do this, and assuming about a 2.5% increase every year. Annually, we look at about a 1.5 increase, including this fiscal year budget. Report will be forthcoming on the tax increment financing value. That's property that we have provided tax increment financing. The full valuation will be coming. What the full valuation will be coming in the upcoming years. I know that was probably a mouthful, but that's where we are at, and that's a report of progress, Mr. Mayor, from the Finance Subcommittee. That concludes our meetings, with the exception of perhaps another meeting that'll be forthcoming on the school department and maintenance of effort in the future.
So we have a motion by Councilor Elliott to accept the report as a report of progress, second by Councilor Milonazo. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, all opposed, so voted. Next, under petitions, we have a request for the city to install a guardrail at or around 3 Powell Street. Chair would entertain a motion to refer that to the Department of Public Works for report and recommendation by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Samaras. Discussion. All in favor, all opposed, so voted. Next, under council motions. The first motion is by Councilor Samaras, request the city manager of the proper department install a crosswalk at the corner of Fletcher Street and Bauer Street. Second by Councilor Rourke. Councilor Samaras.
Thank you. No, as the motion speaks for itself, we do need a crosswalk by St. George's Church on Fletcher Street. There's no crosswalk between the parking lot and the church itself. And it's quite a busy street, so I'd like to see that put place there.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Speaking of crosswalks, I'm wondering whatever happened to the crosswalk that's supposed to go across the street at the Holy Trinity on Lewis Street. There was supposed to be a crosswalk there because they wouldn't put a stop sign saying it wasn't warranted, but they did support a crosswalk, and I didn't hear any more about it. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, all opposed, so voted. The next motion is by Councilor Samaras. Request that the city manager have Superintendent Taylor address the city council regarding current problems that have occurred in the city over the past several weeks. In addition, to have Superintendent Taylor inform the council of crime prevention strategies during the summer months. Seconded by Councilor Rourke. Councilor Samaras.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Things have been going good, actually been going in a very positive direction with the work that the police have been doing. But there has been a spike in crime and some major issues dealing with drugs. This can happen anywhere. It's just part of life. But I think when something like this happens, we want to lay the affairs of the citizens. And I believe that I'd like to see Superintendent of Police Taylor come before us and talk about some of the issues that have happened on Reed Street, in Centerville, Meade Street in South Lowell, some issues in the Highlands. I just believe that by his simply coming before this group and giving an explanation of some of the things that happened and what they did to take care of these issues, I think would be very comforting to people who are watching. But, when I said there's a spike, it's not that anything's out of control. It's just one of these things that does happen. And I think it's very important that when something like that happens, that we make sure that we make our constituents aware of these issues. Also, we are coming into the summer months, and I know, Mr. Manager, that quite often the chief will meet with us in executive session to talk about some of the problems and how he'll handle them. But I'd like to have him, in general, just refer to some of the ways that they deal with expected problems during the summer, even, 4th of July, all of these things that have been an issue raised by many people. So it's just, I just believe this is, it's a positive motion. We are doing well but I think this will help to give our citizens good information. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Leary, then Council Milonazo.
Just real quick, I just want to say thank you to the city manager and to the City of Lowell Police Department and all the agencies that came in the past week in the Highlands in our neighborhood. The professionalism and selflessness was extremely a challenging situation. I know a lot of my neighbors in the area were very concerned, but I really want to send out a thank you to them. It was something that you don't expect in your neighborhood, and it's something that we're very lucky to have the people we have in the Lowell Police Department and in the entire administration who, under challenging circumstances, really rose to the occasion. So personally, as a neighbor and as a city councilor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Council Milonazo.
Thank you. Just to follow up quickly on Council Leary's point, I just do want to thank the administration for keeping the council informed on a very regular basis as things were unfolding, so I certainly appreciate that. But just to follow up on Council Samaras' motion, if we could also ask the superintendent to be prepared to talk about the rash of shootings, as I understand, in the back Central Street neighborhood. So if he could be prepared to talk about what's going on over there as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to echo the comments of both my colleagues there that great job Lowell Police did, and you, Mr. Manager. Lines of communication we were updated, almost on the hour by the hour. Thank you very much for your contact. But when you're criticized for doing too much in a situation like this, you know you did a good job, okay? When it comes to public safety of our residents, this council has made it a top priority, and there's no such thing as doing too much on a public safety perspective. So when that happens, you you did a job well done. So thank you very much to our men and women in Lowell Police as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Council Leahy.
I just wanted to add that we have received, I like the motion, we received a few emails about this, and it's about time just to have another public safety subcommittee meeting on this. But also, I did want to echo the comments that everybody did a great job last week with what was happening in Lowell, and we couldn't have asked for a better job. So all the surrounding towns, but especially the Lowell Police Department, what a job they did. And thank you for keeping us informed the whole time, Mr. Manager.
Thank you. Council Rook, did you want? No, did you? Okay. Any further discussion? Council Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Over the years, my number one pet peeve was communication and the lack thereof with city managers, but I must say, you have kept us right abreast to everything that has been going on minute by minute, so you really exceed my expectations of that word communication. And I, too, want to thank the police department. It's nice to know that the police department have a good rapport with the other organizations, NEMLAC, the SWAT team, the sheriff's office, the tactical units, and everybody that responded within the different communities to come here and help us. I know there was talk that it was quite a lot, but when you're dealing with people that you don't know their personality, and the police know better than us, it was really warranted. And so I want to say, just for my colleagues, thank you very much, as they said.
Mr. Manager.
Yeah, I witnessed the entire event, and I've got to tell you is that the police departments from Chelmsford and the surrounding towns, people were coming from Shrewsbury, from all over the Commonwealth, and it was an incredible, and it was a very dangerous situation, and we didn't overreact. It was a great effort, but we also have to thank Father Ray of St. Margaret's. We took over his parking lot as the operations center, so it was interesting but scary at the same. But the police did a tremendous job, and I congratulate them all.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Councilor Elliott.
I agree. I happened to come off the train, Mr. Manager, and went right through the heart of that neighborhood. And the police, they did a good job in keeping traffic going and trying to keep people calm and still do the job in a very intense atmosphere. So they worked right into the night, and the community is at peace. But I think what the people do know is that when there was a major problem in the city, that our police department was ready, along with our partners in the community, and they jumped action right away, and it was impressive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, all opposed, so voted. The next motion is by Councilor Leary and Councilor Leahy. The City Council requests the City Manager to provide a list of work that needs to be done in a timely manner at Lowell High School. Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. I can't believe Channel 25 left, but, you know, this is, yeah. But, Mr. Manager, could we just really take a good look at I know we have about a month left of the school, but in light of what happened last week, I think that situation at the high school with the science room got blown out of proportion. But I do think there are certain jobs over there that need to be done quickly and efficiently. And I think the one thing positive thing that came out of that last week is that we can just jump in and get a couple of these things done quickly and efficiently. So if we learned anything from last week, let's try to be, if we can get everybody together on the same page, be more efficient, just get these nuisance jobs out of the way and get back on track with our maintenance at the high school.
Okay, Mr. Manager.
Just briefly, we'll be giving a full report, but we had a great meeting this morning, is that Sean Shanahan has developed a list as part of his inspection process of the repairs that are necessary at Lowell High School, and he's prioritized them. And we met today with Mr. Shanahan, with Rick Underwood from the school department, Jim Green and Jim Troop from the DPW, and starting tomorrow, there'll be a team assigned specifically to Lowell High School each day. They have the list of priorities, and they're going to be going through them one by one. We'll be meeting again in 2 weeks just to go over, how they've done, and then continue to go on with those items. And I've also asked DPW to accompany Mr. Shanahan on the tours of the other schools so that they can develop the same type of list to use in the other schools also. So there's a program in place, and we're going to monitor the effectiveness of it.
Okay, and even if, with a couple of motions that Council Leary put on too, even if we set up I don't know what they have for a setup over at the high school, but even if we could put some sort of a utility room together with supplies that everybody needs, so when they get to the high school, the materials are there, they're stored there, and then work can be done a lot quickly. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, all opposed, so voted. The next motion is by Councilor the City Council requests the City Manager to provide an update regarding the sidewalk crossing in Chelmsford Street and Inland Street. In addition, provide an update regarding the improvements planned for Inland Street. Seconded by Councilor Leahy. Councilor Leary.
This was something we had on a motion probably last April, and I thought it was due to funding. We were waiting, and I didn't hear anything about it. I know that Lanada Neighbors, that's the place where the trees are enormous and the sidewalks are coming up, and we were going to have a neighborhood meeting speaking about how we were going to resolve that. So if we can get an update on that, about the funding and what the plan will be. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, all opposed, so voted. The next motion is by Councilor. The City Council requests the City Manager provide an update regarding the feasibility of combining the Public Works and Lowell Public Schools custodian departments into a maintenance department. Seconded by Councilor Leahy. Councilor Leary.
This is one I think I had a couple of weeks ago, and I'd like to amend it to send it to the Facilities Subcommittee if I could. Ultimately, what Mr. Leahy was discussing, and I know, Mayor, you and I, when I was the school committee person, we had this issue as well, but the issue is a big repetitive issue about maintenance, not only basically the schools, but I guess in other city buildings as well. We need to really rethink how we're doing this. Now, the motion that I had earlier was regarding combining custodians and DPW into a maintenance department like they do in Lexington and other towns. That might not be the smart thing or the advantageous for Lowell. If there's a better idea, that'd be nice. But the conversations we continue to have, and not just this, I'm not saying this administration, I'm just saying, decades, are the same ones over and over again. So we need to really change how we're structured. We need to change the ability of folks like custodians to be able to do basic maintenance, whether it be painting or repairing, basic stuff that they have to put a ticket in for. We're not saying HVAC or plumbing. Obviously, that's a strong skill set, but we need to look at this differently and make really deep disruption to what, is going on. But I think I can just make that an amendment to make it to the facilities subcommittee and have a real good discussion about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. If there's no objection, we'll amend the motion and Council Leary's request to send it to the Facilities Subcommittee. Hearing no objection. Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? So voted. Council Rourke?
Motion 11.7, Mayor Kennedy requests the city manager have the proper department add Spark Street to the repavement list. Second by Council Samaras. Mayor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the motion speaks for itself through you to the city manager. I know that we have a limited budget, and I know we have a long list of these streets. But I do think that at some point in the future, we should try to come up with some sort of strategy that's going to address some of these streets that maybe aren't accepted streets, but nevertheless, they still need to be repaved from periodically. That's all.
Those opposed, all those in favor, motion passes. Next motion of the evening by Mayor Kennedy, City Council requests city manager provide the City Council with a report regarding the process for appealing unusually high water and sewer bills. Second by Councilman Malinazzo. Mayor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the manager. Mr. Manager, that's really why I came down here, is to talk about this one. I've got two people that contacted the mayor's office. One has a bill of about $6,700–$6,800, and the other one has a bill about $4,700 or $4,800. And I think both of them are single-family houses. And I think any reasonable person would just say those bills are too high and there's something the matter. And I think that it's somewhat unclear, at least to me, and I have to think it's unclear to most citizens, exactly what the appeal process is. And so I think if that could be spelled out and publicized, that would be helpful. But also, I think there needs to be some sort of, I think we need to address these two issues at least. And I know this is an issue that's come up from time to time. 6 to 8 months ago, I think there was another councilor, I don't remember who, but several councilors have probably come up from time to time with bills that are extraordinarily high to the extent that it's obvious that there's something the matter and that they didn't use all of that water. Now, maybe something happened to it or whatever, but nevertheless, you can't expect a single-family homeowner to pay a water bill like that, I don't think. That isn't in arrears.
City manager.
If you can send those two bills over to the office, we'll look into those specifically right now, but then we'll give a report on what the appeals process is so the public knows.
Okay, thank you very much.
All opposed, all in favor, motion passes. Next section of the agenda, announcements.
Move to adjourn.
Why did you look at me?